Thank you very much. Ranking Member Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kramek, I think costs are critical. When you think about it, we're here discussing costs. Why? Because consumers pay more when shipping costs are higher. Whether our farmers who are trying to export their products, as we saw during COVID, are literally our products getting left on the docks, and importers are paying more if shipping costs are too high. So when we look at these incidents that we now see in our supply chain, and we had our own incident in Seattle where a container ship lost power and was careening towards our big Ferris wheel in the downtown, right next to our ferry terminal. Luckily, some passenger ferry vessels were able to push the tug from, out of the direct path of severe devastation. So now we mentioned Suez Canal, we mentioned Baltimore, we have our own Seattle experience. What do we need to do to make sure on the cost side that we aren't, that we're making the right investments from a security level to make sure that these kinds of incidents that can do great harm do not happen? And Commissioner Sola, since you were at U.S. Southern Command, what do you think we need to do to renegotiate or to have a conversation with the Panamanians about the security level that we think needs to exist in Panama with this close proximity? And Mr. Maffei, will the audit lead to a discussion with Panama about those contracts? As I've said in my opening statement, I believe we should be very aggressive about U.S. involvement here and in Latin America. I think Panama represents one of the biggest U.S. supporters in that region, but we should engage to get this right, both on the cost side and on the security side. So if I could just hear your comments on each of those.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. Well, certainly even one incident is unacceptable from a safety perspective that you're citing. Our members work tremendously hard with the International Maritime Organization, the U.S. Coast Guard, and other entities to try to have the safest operations possible. But accidents do occur. They are rare if you count the number of some 7,000 port visits a year. But again, one is unacceptable. So continued investment, obviously, in U.S. infrastructure and a review. I mean, we have a lot of old infrastructure, as the tragic incident in Baltimore illustrated, unfortunately. We have these bridges that need a hard look to whether or not they need additional fendering systems and the like. And investments in our ports and infrastructure can be helpful along those lines as well. And for our members, I can assure you that they continue to invest in the latest technology. We have over 600 new ships on order with some of the latest technology in the world. So we're playing our role.
And I want the U.S. to get a big portion of that. That's why we need to reinvigorate. Commissioner Sola, what about just a new U.S. Southern Command, U.S. government conversation with the canal authorities and the government about the security level that we seek?
Thank you very much, Senator. First of all, the airborne wing that I'm wearing today is decorative. I have not worn a uniform in 35 years, so this is my personal experience here. I believe that the security of the canal has always been understood to be provided by the United States. Panama does not have a military. And I always believe that there's been a close relationship with Southern Command that we would provide that. And it would be nice to see if we had a formalization of that in one way or another, because I don't believe that it's in the treaty at all.
Okay, so formalization of maybe a cyber security agreement. See, I'm thinking you have accidents and then you have larger cybersecurity issues that you just have to be on top of. And what I don't like about anybody that has a back door is I'm for the United States advocating, don't buy from people who have a government back door. Don't do it, because what are you going to do? At some point in time, you're going to regret that. Commissioner Maffei, what about this audit, and could we push Panama on these issues of looking at closer U.S. infrastructure instead, particularly since you know, the sea change here is like what everybody said. Like, everybody thought this was Hong Kong, then it turned into China. We didn't have an ambassador after that. Next thing you know, they've made more aggressive postures. They're making aggressive postures everywhere. That's why the United States saying no government backdoors in technology and getting 5 other technology nations and democracies to say the same thing and evangelize that every day is going to help us.
Yeah.
And so is the investment. But what about getting the stevedoring business or some of that back into proximity under the audit?
Well, it is the Panama Comptroller's Office, and they are investigating, contracts at Panamanian ports. And we don't have any jurisdiction over Panamanian ports per se. But your broader point, I think, is very, very important. While we were down there, both of us heard, I think, several times that the Panamanians would, the ones we talked to anyway, would welcome U.S. companies coming in and doing a lot of this work. Frankly, their bids are not competitive with the Chinese bids. Frankly, they're not that existent because the U.S. companies can make more money doing things other places. But even if they were existent, it is difficult to put competitive bids when the Chinese bids are so heavily subsidized by China. So you're absolutely right. This is a problem, and it's a problem in many, many other areas of the world that we can get into if you want in subsequent questions. But that's the concern.
My time has expired, but I think my major point is, let's be a big maritime powerhouse. Let's revitalize our supply chains, drive down costs for consumers, and secure what we need to secure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. And very quickly, Commissioner Maffei, you talked about the Chinese bids were heavily subsidized by the Chinese government. What would China's incentive be to heavily subsidize those bids to undercut American companies and other companies?
Yeah, it's not a real short answer, but Senator, China's made no secret of its ambitious policies to gain influence at ports throughout the globe. It's invested in 129 ports in dozens of countries. It runs a majority of 17 ports. That does not include this Hong Kong company, right? So that's just direct Chinese-owned ports. So it has been a part of their Belt and Road strategy, whatever you want to call it, the Maritime Silk Road for decades. So they believe that this influence, this investment in owning maritime ports is important to their economy.
Senator Fisher.